Hjertelig velkommen til et nytt program her på Israelkanalen. Denne gangen så er vi i Beersheva, og jeg skal besøke en av de overlevende fra massakren som skjedde den 7. oktober, nemlig Adele Raemer. Heartily welcome to Israelkanalen, Adele.
Thank you for coming to visit me in my temporary home in Beersheva.
Yes, because you lived in close to Gaza, and your community, your kibbutz, was overrun by Hamas terrorists. When I visited you first time in December 22, you were talking about the life on the border, and I thought that you were very optimistic in one way about, living peacefully together, and suddenly this devastating things happened on October 7th. Can you tell me what you experienced that day?
So on October 7th, I had planned to get up early in the morning before sunrise to go take pictures of wildflowers, squills, a field of wildflowers. Thankfully, I was too lazy to get up that morning. It was holiday, and my son was visiting, and I stayed in bed. If I hadn't stayed in bed, I would not be sitting here today talking to you, because within half an hour, the place was overrun by terrorists, especially where it was that I was going to go photograph. So at 6:30 in the morning, we started getting incoming rocket warnings. I live on kibbutz Nirim, which is 2 kilometers away from the border with the Gaza Strip. So that means that when we have a warning, we have between 0 to 10 seconds from the second we hear the alarm to the second we hear an explosion, 0 to 10 seconds to get to someplace safe. So my safe room, every house within 4 kilometers of the border has a safe room, rocket-proof safe room, which I use usually as my guest room. So my son, who was visiting, was in the safe room, and I jumped out of my bed and I ran to the safe room. But we could tell that it was something unusual because it was an extremely heavy barrage, so heavy, in fact, that I was scared to stand up. I was sitting on the floor. We were both sitting on the floor, and there's the window that we have in that safe room has a heavy iron sleeve that you have to close when there's rocket fires to prevent shrapnel from penetrating the room. It was such a heavy barrage, I was scared to stand up and do that. So I just waited for a while. What we only realized in retrospect was that the heavy barrage was there to camouflage the main event that was going on along the border, where thousands of terrorists were infiltrating the border at the same time, all along the border. The border's about 65 kilometers long, and there were, I don't know how many breaches in the fence, in this what was impenetrable fence that was the highest technology in the world fence. That we trusted to keep us safe was being penetrated. Not long after that, we got word on the internal messaging system that Israel was being invaded, and that we should go out and lock our doors, close our windows, close all the blinds, and go back into the safe room and lock the door. The only problem is you cannot lock a safe room door because it was built to keep you safe from rockets, not from infiltration. So I went outside and I closed the door, and I even did a Facebook Live on my group Life on the Border. And you see me talking there saying, I don't really think this is necessary because they're not going to get to Nirim. They're not going to get that far. This army, they're going to stop them before they get to us, but I'll humor them. I'll do it anyway. So I closed everything and went back into the safe room. We closed the door, and then we started getting messages that the kibbutz was being invaded. And I sent on the messaging system, we can't lock the doors. I knew this. I was aware of this since the day I got the safe room. I asked the person in charge of security at the time, how do you lock the door? And he said, you can't lock it because if something happens to you and you're inside the safe room and it's locked, medical responders aren't going to be able to come and get you out and save you. That's why it doesn't lock. And there were people that didn't realize that. They were saying, yeah, but you pull it down and it clicks and it's locked from that. But no, it's not. Anybody from the outside can come and open the handle and come in. Mm-hmm. So we realized that the only way to keep it locked to any extent is by pulling down on the handle. So that's what we did. My son, who was visiting me, sat on the floor, pulling down on the handle. Not the whole time. At first not. But we started seeing messages on the internal kibbutz messaging system saying that they can hear gunfire and they can hear voices in Arabic. I know how to identify rocket exploding and mortar exploding. I never heard gunfire in the kibbutz. We're about 450 people on our kibbutz. I know where everybody lives. So I'm watching the messaging system and following the progression of the terrorists. So they go from house to house. And I realize that they're coming closer to us. We started also getting messages saying that people heard the terrorists inside their house, that they were breaking things and smashing things. They were trying to open the safe room door. And at one point they said that people started calling for help saying, where's the IDF? Where's the fire department? They're breaking into our house. They're setting the house on fire. They took gas balloons from outside the houses, put it inside the house, lit a match and set it on fire. So it exploded inside their house. And at one point we heard a family with a baby, a 10-day-old baby, who was in their safe room. The terrorists tried to infiltrate their safe room. They didn't manage because both of them were holding down the handle, but they did manage to dislodge it to a certain extent so that when they set the rest of the house on fire, the smoke started streaming in between the door and the framework. So this couple, this family, were online with the first aid, somebody in Jerusalem who was telling them what to do, to open the window a little bit, to put the baby on the windowsill every so often so he'd get some fresh air. So we're following this progression of what's going on, and you're helpless. Right. You don't know what to do. There's no army, no security, nobody's coming to save us. We have our first responders, but they were a very small group, and many of them were not on the kibbutz at the time. It was vacation, it was holiday time. Some of them couldn't leave the house, like my son-in-law, who was in the house with my 3 grandchildren, but he couldn't go out and leave them on their own. My daughter and son-in-law are separated, so she was in the house on her own, and he was on his own. He couldn't leave the kids. They're aged 2, 6, and 8. At one point, he hears the terrorists coming inside his house, and they're breaking things and making noise, and he said to my granddaughters, hide under the blanket. Don't come out from under the blanket until I tell you that you can. You can hear a loud noise. Just stay under the blanket. And he opened his door and shot the terrorist that was right in front of his door. He wanted to get the other 2 that were in his house, but he realized that just outside the house, there were multiple highly armed terrorists. So he just cut his losses, went back into the safe room, closed the door, and got down on one knee and pointed his gun at the door and was ready to shoot anybody who walked through the door. Around the same time, my son heard a noise that he didn't know. He didn't recognize what that noise was. And then he heard Arabic. and he understands a little bit of Arabic, and they were saying, come away from there, or something like that. We didn't know what it was, but I looked at my son and he looked at me, and we told each other that we loved each other and basically said goodbye.
Yeah.
I was sure I was not going to see another sunrise. I was sure my son and I were going to die there like stars of the Holocaust. You know, this is 2023 in Israel. How can something like this be happening?
Yeah.
About an hour later, we still heard gunfire, but it sounded like it was farther away. I was already in physical pain because I hadn't gone to the bathroom. The safe room does not have a bathroom, doesn't have water. So I opened the door very quietly in case there was terrorists in the house. I would hear them and I'd be able to close it again. But as I opened the door, I saw opposite my safe room, the slats on my window had been broken. So what we heard was terrorists starting to infiltrate the house, and for some reason they got called away.
Okay, thanks God.
I can tell you that a woman 2 houses down from me and her son were kidnapped around the same time. So if there's any connection, I don't know. I can only speculate. No, there was nobody around to bear witness to why they left my house.
I remember I saw your Facebook postings because we were up in Netanya at the time, and I was thinking about you and my visit there, and went to your Facebook page and saw your postings there that you were hiding, holding down the door handle, and I was thinking, okay, I hope that there's not enough pull to keep it locked from the outside. But then it took a long time. There was no updates from you, and I was thinking the worst. We were praying for your safety, and I'm so happy that later on that day there was another post and then another post. And but how many hours were you alone there?
So the army arrived in force at 1:30. That was 7 hours after it began. What we didn't realize, and we didn't realize till about 6 weeks ago, is that at 7 in the morning, there was the southern commander who had realized that something was going on, and he was in an army base that 5 minutes away. They were the ones that were supposed to come to save us, that army base. So when he heard the rocket fire, he went out with 2 other soldiers to come see what was going on. He was in Nirim. Part of that shooting that we heard was this battle that they were having in Nirim that none of us knew anything about. He managed to kill a number of the leaders of the Nukhba, of the terrorist group that were in our kibbutz. But then tragically he and his soldiers were killed. The leaders that were left realized that they had a high-ranking commander there, and they wanted to get credit for having killed him. After decapitating them, they threw their bodies on a vehicle and drove back into Gaza, which is one of the little miracles. There were many horrible tragedies that day, but there were also some little miracles that saved us. So this was one of those little miracles, because it meant that there weren't any leaders from this band of terrorists, this Nukhba band of terrorists. They had no leaders on Nirim, which is why Nirim wasn't hit as badly as Nir Oz. Nir Oz, 2 kilometers away, 1 out of every 4 of their people gone, slaughtered, disappeared, captured, kidnapped. We lost 5 people, were slaughtered, and 5 people were kidnapped. And Hamami, the commanders being there is one of the reasons why that number is so low. So the boots on the ground that we knew about were at 1:30, and they started going from house to house, rescuing people. First of all, they started off in the corner that was most dire, that was being burnt actively, the house of Uriel and Amy, where they had this 10-day-old baby. So they went and they rescued them and rescued other people in that area. And they went house to house, first of all, clearing the area around me, being sure that there were no terrorists around each house, each neighborhood, and extracting us from our houses. So they didn't get to my son and me until about 5:15 in the afternoon. So we were there almost 11 hours in the safe room, in mortal fear. Because even when the army was in the kibbutz, we didn't know that that they'd gotten all the terrorists. So they took us out of the house and walked us to the community center so that they would be able to circle all of us and keep us as in central place as possible. And all the while there were rocket alerts, and there was a rocket alert while we were being escorted to the community center. We had to throw ourselves down on the ground and cover our heads and wait until we heard the explosion, and then we're able to continue. So we stayed there overnight. Again, there was a lot of noise. It was an active war zone. Yeah. The next day around 1 o'clock, we were told that we should go quickly to our houses, pack a small bag, and that we were going to be evacuated to Eilat, to a hotel in Eilat. And that as soon as we finished packing the bag, we should go back into our safe room and wait there until we were called. We were called out to the buses around an hour later, and we finally left Nirim, again, through an active war zone. As we were driving along the main 232 artery, we passed cars that were on the side of the road burning, and charred bodies on the ground, and tanks driving by, and it was a battle zone. Yeah. We arrived at Eilat at 8:30, and we were in Eilat as a kibbutz. We evacuated all of us to a hotel in Eilat until a few weeks ago, when the kibbutz started moving to Beersheba. We realized that being in Eilat, being in a hotel, was fine for me. I'm on my own. But for a family with young children, it's very challenging to live permanently in a hotel room that's about, maybe the size of this living room, and that's it. Yeah. So since families had started evacuating, leaving the hotel because it was just unbearable, we took a decision to find a temporary place where we could be for the interim until we could go back home. And the kibbutz voted on Beersheba, and we're here, divided among 4 different communities, 4 different neighborhoods, which will make preserving community a challenge. And we're going to have to work very hard at it. But a kibbutz is more than the physical place where you live. Yeah. Kibbutz is community, and community is what builds resilience. That's why I have it tattooed on my arm, resilience, because that's the name of the game. We have no idea how long we're going to be here. So we have to try and build some sort of a structure to preserve the community. The children, all of the families with children are in one neighborhood. That's where they have the kindergarten, the Nirim kindergarten, Nirim baby house, nursery, and the older children go to different kibbutz schools about half an hour away. They get bussed out from that neighborhood in the morning, and we're trying to build routines. There are new jobs, there are people who've lost their jobs. They don't have the jobs that they had, but we're building new jobs because there are new needs that have to be done in a community.
Life needs to go on.
Life needs to go on, for sure. You know, the days that are hardest for me are days when I'm not doing, because that's how I deal. That's how I stay resilient and protect myself, my soul, my heart, by doing things that are meaningful for myself, for my family, for the community. For example, giving interviews, writing, taking pictures of the community, going back there taking pictures. I have a project of people from Nirim in the Israeli flag that I take pictures of them in the flag, but it's in black and white. And when we go back, I'll turn it back into color. So finding purpose is important. And the days that are hardest for me, the days when I sink, are days that I don't have things that I'm doing to keep myself occupied.
I see that you have a tag on your blouse, 128. Tell us a little bit about the meaning of that.
So every day when I get up, I write the number of days that our hostages have been in Gaza, number of days that we have been refugees from our home, number of days that our soldiers have been in Gaza losing their lives. We had 5 hostages, 3 of them were released, the women. We still have 2 hostages there. Yegev Buchstav and Nadav Popovel have been in Gaza for 128 days. We don't know if they're alive or dead. We know when there was the hostage release in November, there were the hostages that were released. One of them was Nadav's mother, and the other, Rimon, is Yegev's wife. And they were together, so they knew that they were alive as of when they were released. We have no idea what's going on now. And every few days we get notification of hostages that were killed, hostages that died, killed. Nobody's died a natural death there, as far as I know.
It's very hard to take in, but you also have a dog tag around your neck with some engravings on.
Yes.
What does it say?
So one side says, my heart is hostage in Gaza, bring them home now. On the other side, I engraved the names of 2 of my close friends from Niroz who were out on a sunrise walk on October 7th. And they were shot and abducted from the fields outside our homes. I was hoping that when they came home, I would be able to give them this. Unfortunately, as far as we know, they were murdered on October 7th. They did not survive it, but their bodies are still hostage in Gaza, 128 days. Their families can't have closure. They can't be buried. Yeah. They can't mourn them properly.
What do you think about the future? Will Israel succeed in destroying Hamas?
We have to. We have to. We can't live with neighbors like that. Hamas has to be destroyed. Their weapon capabilities have to be destroyed. And a lot of re-education has to be done to the population in Gaza, because I'm sure when you were in Nirim in December 2022, you heard me say that I'm sure the great majority of Gazans just want the same thing that I do, to put food on their table and have safety for their children. On October 7th, something in my DNA changed. And I no longer believe that the great majority actually want the same thing that I do, unfortunately. I believe that it's the number of Gazans who want me dead is far larger than I had originally believed. And that's education. Because the Hamas has been educating them very thoroughly for the past 20 years to hate us. They've been educating the children that we want to kill them, that we're their enemies. I'm sure you've seen clips of kindergarten children in Gaza dressing up as IDF soldiers and terrorists, Gazan fighters. And the Gazan fighters are killing the IDF soldiers or taking them hostage. And those are the monsters that were in my house, on my porch, in my community, in our region on October 7th. So they've been trained very well. And they need to be re-educated to understand that we hold our hands out in peace. We would love to live as good neighbors. We would love nothing more than for the people of Gaza to thrive and have happy lives and safe lives. And I've always said that this is not a conflict that can be solved with guns and bombs, and it has to be solved by diplomacy. But I now realize that unfortunately, before we can make peace, we have to make war.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the situation how it is, and of course we want this situation to come to a closure, and that Hamas will be destroyed, and that peace can also come to Gaza, and that the Israelis that lives here will have peace
on both sides.
On both sides.
We need peace on both sides. Unfortunately, when the Hamas say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, that's a genocidal war cry, and yes. I take them at their word. But I'm an optimist as part of my nature, and I'm hopeful that Israel will be able to the IDF will be able to do their job properly. And I hope the countries of the world are going to step up, because the re-educating, the changes that have to be done there, that can't be us. We can't do that for them. But they need help. They need help from other countries in the world that are going to come in and help them not only rebuild, but re-educate and redesign a society where everybody can prosper.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Adele, for your time and this interview.
Thank you for interviewing me again.
And for dere som har sett på, så vil jeg bare igjen minne dere om den her fryktelige tragedien som skjedde den 7. oktober. Israel kommer aldri til å bli den samme, men livet, det må gå videre. Og vi må bare se etter en løsning. Tusen takk for at du fulgte oss, og på gjensyn igjen neste uke. Takk for nå.